Hello, hello, hello. Good to see you. You get fairy dust, I get fairy dust, little Amelie gets fairy dust, all the advanced bitches get fairy dust. Okay, it's time for a question for Ask an Advanced Bitch. So this is a question about maladaptive daydreaming. Okay. And so, well, I just had my world flipped upside down learning about maladaptive daydreaming. Before hearing about this, I knew my daydreams affected my life and there were negative things that came with it, but I associated it with ADHD. I looked up ways to minimize it, and most were ways to stop doing it. I cried when I read one advice that said to have the characters tell you to go back. I am going to speak with a therapist. Genius, that's the number one answer. I am thinking it was to work on it that minimally I would want a special time set aside to visit my world. Knowing your magical spirit and using fantasy to dig deeper, and your tolerance to balance both our responses and tolerate healthier skills. I am also interested to see your perspective. I don't know, I also heard someone say it was a form of self-harm, and someone else says a study found no link to trauma, but I'm going to go out on a limb and think whoever conducted this study was referring to simply trauma by one big event, not CPTSD or not childhood trauma. Okay. So for us to get, so I have like vaguely heard of maladaptive daydreaming. And I usually just didn't pay it any mind because I heard the term. I'm like, oh, I know what that is. Because in my mind, it's dissociation, but it's actually not. So it has its own definition. So I'm going to read in case you're like me and you don't know what maladaptive daydreaming is. So here are some of the features. This is from healthline.com. Okay, extremely vivid daydreams where their own characters, settings, plots, and other detailed story-like features. Okay. Daydreams triggered by real-life events, difficulty completing everyday tasks, difficulty sleeping at night, an overwhelming desire to continue daydreaming, performing repetitive movements while daydreaming, making facial expressions while daydreaming. This makes me laugh at myself because one of the things that I do when I listen to audiobooks is I will catch myself like she waved, and I might catch myself waving, or she looks surprised and I might look surprised. Like, what am I doing? So I can relate to that. Whispering and talking while daydreaming for lengthy periods from many minutes to hours. Experts still aren't sure what causes maladaptive daydreaming. Okay. All right. So, as you already know, since I had to read you a definition, I'm definitely not an expert on this. But one of the things that I do is I just need to make this shit simple. And so, I have ADHD symptoms, but I think of it as trauma. I think of any of the things that I'm doing that aren't the best or the most helpful, or my habits that I wish were different habits. I just know that somewhere along the line, things got fucked up due to my childhood trauma. I don't know how it did. I don't know what it did. I don't know, I don't know how. And for me, that is very helpful so that I don't have to now I got to research this. Now I got to do all the research on ADHD, and I got to go, I need to go down a rabbit hole to just, I have that. And it's like, I have trauma and I have this. It's like, no, this is the same. And one of my symptoms, again, this is how I think of it as, and I do think that there are people who have ADHD who don't have trauma. I do think that. So I'm just talking about me and how I think about these things. if I have, okay, so I get migraines. Okay, so that I attribute that to my childhood trauma. My body did what it did. Do I go to a neurologist? 100%. But I don't need to like him and haw and wonder why I have it. Like, I just like, oh, that's just one of the things that has come up in my life that makes me, that makes my life difficult. And, almost in a way, it's like, that's probably trauma. Okay, so I do that, but it's like, what do I need to do with my action? If I find that, I'm writing a book and it's so frustrating. Like, I will sit there, I'm like, okay, bitch, here we go. And, but wait, I need to go put that laundry in first. Let me go do that. Okay, here I go. I'm going to write. It's going to be great. It's like, oh, I need to return that email. Like, it's hard for me to like stay put. So instead of me like going to research all the ADHD thing, I just like, how do I solve that problem? I set timers. I have accountability. I, will sometimes turn on Instagram and, hey, anybody who just want to work with me for 20-25 minutes to find the answer. And I don't worry about, I just want to solve my problems. And so when you first told me, when you first mentioned maladaptive daydreaming, I immediately thought of dissociation. So for me, if I had maladaptive daydreaming, I would just put that in my dissociation pile. I might say you're more creative than me because I don't do maladaptive daydreaming. I just listen to audiobooks and watch TV. So I don't have to be bothered with creating the fantasy. I can just watch the fantasy or take in the content of the other person, the artist who made all this, or the artists that came together and made all this. And so it's like so I guess I have maladaptive daydreaming by proxy. So, but it just makes me, okay. So that's my take. And since you know me and I talk about being a dissociative, and I talk about freeze mode, and I talk about, that I fully give myself permission to check out, if I need to. And I call it dosing myself with like, so if I do not do some freeze mode self-care, like getting to watch TV and being done for the day and all that, if I don't, about a week goes by and I can't get out of bed. A week or two goes by without me taking, being conscious and taking care of that. It will take me over. And so I like to like, almost like, leave something at the altar for my dissociative part. So it's like, I'll take care of you. I'll do these things. I'll rest for the rest of the day. I'll take off at 3. I'll just whatever. And, we'll get to watch our show. And so then it's like, so the dissociation, and you could say this is maladaptive daydreaming. My disassociation is like, okay, as long as you're doing that, I will stand back and let you run it. And, but bitch, if you don't, I'm going to take over. So, okay. So, here's my shit. Here's my issue. And this is my thoughts is, if part of what I do, I feel like if I can't do, my version of maladaptive daydreaming by proxy, which is like almost constantly have a podcast or Audible on, and you tell me I have to stop doing that, it's not gonna go well for me. It's not gonna go well for me because it's part of my self-care. And so, and that's where we get to the place where I don't believe it's maladaptive for me. I don't think any of the shit that my psyche comes up with is maladaptive. I see it as adaptive. My, freeze mode is adaptive because it helped me survive. It's maladaptive to do my to-do list, but I don't give a fuck about my to-do list. I care about me, and I care about my self-care, and I care about, living instead of surviving. Like, I'm trying to thrive here. I'm trying to live fully. I'm trying to, become my full self as much as I can in this lifetime. And, there's some shit that went down in the past, and I figured out ways to cope, and it brings me a lot of comfort. So, I mean, my eating disorder is maladaptive, but is it? Because it helped me survive. Is it going to give me terrible consequences? Yes. But, and so it just makes me think, like, then we have to call fan fiction maladaptive. That's fantasy. It's like, that's maladaptive daydreaming, but you're typing it. Novels are maladaptive daydreaming. Like, you know what I mean? And so for me, all I would do for me is like, oh, is the self-care of, checking out, dissociating, giving myself some space and time because life is hard, is it more than I want? Like, do I want to try to do it a little bit less? And then I would. Like, you talk about missing your characters. I get really sad. There's some characters I fall hard. I didn't make them up, but I fall hard for them. And I think about them and I miss them. And so, I'm deep and I'm intense, and I, connect with art when it connects with me so deeply. I feel so seen and loved. And, I will watch an episode of Ted Lasso and just want to hug everybody in my family. Like, I just feel it so, so deeply. Like, I'm sorry, we got to hug now. Like, this has filled me with so much love that I just want to express it. And so definitely don't pay attention to me. Definitely pay attention to your therapist. Definitely pay attention to whatever, if it's maladaptive for you, get to choose. In my opinion, we all get to choose whether something is maladaptive. My eating disorder saved my life. Dissociative issues saved my life. I almost think, if we're on a continuum, maybe you didn't have as much access to television or something like that you had to create your own, you know what I mean? And a lot, you could also say it means you're very creative, and think about all these interviews with, George Lucas, and how do you create these worlds and all that? It's like, that's called art, and, maybe part of making it not maladaptive is to write it down and put it on the internet, or, share it with other people, and, or maybe it's just your thing that you do on your own, so I don't know. Again, don't pay attention to me. I'm not suggesting that anyone continue to do something that they find maladaptive, and that's the last thing that I want. But I know for me, I'm doing the best that I can. And the way that has worked for me is to employ some of the things that bring me comfort, as long as it's not making me have consequences that I'm not willing to live with, or consequences that that actually physically cause. Because so acting out on my eating disorder now is going to cause me physical consequences and may shorten my life. So I don't do it. So to the best of my ability, because I'm a fucking addict. So, and if I do start doing it, I get all the help that I need, because it's captured me again, and I need help not being captured by it. But I don't look at it as like, I'm not ashamed of it. I used to be very, very ashamed. Who would do that, But I'm not ashamed anymore. And I am quite impressed with all the things that my psyche did to save me. It's done some incredible things. And I feel like I owe it everything, because it got me here. It got me to the place where I can actually try to live as Elizabeth, fully as Elizabeth. And I mean, in a few minutes, I'm going to turn this off, and I'm probably going to turn on a podcast, or I'm probably going to turn on, a TV show, because I had a class today and it didn't feel well yesterday, and I had a client today, And so for me, it's an act of love, like it's an act of self-care. And, you know, so I don't know, like I'm just reflecting how I would think of these things. When I hear that you do this, I just feel so much love for you, that you, you figured it out. You and your psyche figured out how to live, and now you get to choose how much of that you need, if any at all. But for me, I don't insult I mean, I'm not saying you are, or anybody is, but my psyche has worked its ass off. And yes, some of the things, the stupid shit and the dangerous shit that I did, I'm lucky enough that I got to still live with some of that, and it saved my life. And so I'm grateful to it, and I appreciate it, because otherwise I probably wouldn't be here. So those are my thoughts. I don't know if they're helpful or not helpful. Hopefully it's helpful, but I don't know. I just anytime I, connect with another CPTSD kid, I just feel like, we have been through it. We have been through it. And I'm tired of being told like I'm doing something wrong, And so I just send you so much love, and I send you, and I just honor the part of you that, daydreams like this. And again, we all get to choose. With me, if I start laying down all day long, that's not self-care. Like I'm isolating, or I've checked out of life too much. And my goal is to stay checked in to life as much as I humanly possibly can. And I'm just noticing year after year, it's getting a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, because I'm willing to be so kind to myself and honor the trauma responses that saved my life. Okay, so I hope that's helpful.